Microphone checker. Hold on. I'm doing like a little live TikTok video here too.
Anyway, I don't want the Chardonnay to go too cold. It's not really cold in there.
Okay. You ready to pull it?
What is it?
I'll pull it.
I have no idea how cold it will be.
Bottom of the...
It goes to 41.
41?
You ready? I'll pull it.
The world is out of order.
Hi, where are we going? TikTokers here?
Yeah, we've been on them. They were watching the whole operation. Yeah.
Behind the scenes setup.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Hold on. Let me open it. Yeah.
You really think they want to see that?
No, nobody wants to see it, but. All right, let me grab the Chardonnay first.
Yeah. Save it. Are you showing them?
Or do you want it now? We're going. We are going. All right, we are going. So you get your bottle out there.
All right. Oh, that's lovely.
Perfusion. I like that. All right, where do we start? We're gonna start with a cheer?
We're live.
Let's start with a toast.
Cheers.
Toast.
Episode 23
of Churps from the Nest.
2023.
2023.
2023.
And we still can't handle it.
Here it is. Here it is, and here we are at the Grape Nest live, live to our TikTokers and future watchers on YouTube. I'm pleased to welcome our guest, John Bry. John is a local winemaker and vineyard owner and entrepreneur, among other hats which he wears, which we'll get into a little bit later. But right now, we are tasting his 2021 Pinot Noir, made right here in Richmond, California. That's the other thing we wanted to promote here is a Richmond-based business. John's been working his wines out of Richmond since 2011. Was the first effort, correct?
2012 was the first vintage.
First vintage to actually, yeah.
So I'm actually more the farmer than the winemaker.
Yes.
I'm partly winemaker, but I actually have a very close relationship with another individual who has been with me since, actually well before me. He's been making wine for 30 years.
So Thomas Leaf, correct?
Yeah, Tom Leaf. And right. I grow all the Pinot, estate Pinot in Richmond, up in Wildcat Canyon, and basically it is made in the Bay Area. Beyond that, the vineyard, which is up in Wildcat Canyon, I grow Tuscan olives for olive oil. Everything is. The olives have been organic since planted in 2007 when I planted, and the Pinot Noir, once I proved that I could grow it in a very unlikely location or atypical location, I switched over to all organic farming of the Pinot in 2019. So we're looking at 3 years organic, and which technically could be certified organic at this point.
Okay. John, can I ask you, what part of Wildcat Canyon, how do you get to you? Or do you go up Dam Road, or are we going back to El Sobrani?
Well, it's McBride is kind of a landmark exit there if you're heading towards Berkeley, and otherwise it's getting off at Amador on the way in the direction of Sacramento. But I will preface it by saying at this point we are working with county planners and zoning in order to establish whether or not we can transition from a agricultural base, meaning vineyard, to a winery. And there's conspicuous differences between the two in terms of what it'll allow me to do. At the present time, I can have invited events, but I can't be just routinely open to the public. And so what I do is periodically and sometimes without warning, I'll open up for tasting in an afternoon on a Saturday or Sunday, or I've got a couple of events coming up, music events. But these are all private affairs. But I do notify on Instagram and through my email list when we will be open. So it gives just the general public an opportunity to swing by and check us out. We are up in Wildcat Canyon on Park Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Just above
This is a big canyon.
Alvarado Park.
Yeah.
If you're going up in that direction.
Yeah.
We used to go to Alvarado Park, and we used to hang out there as kids. It's a great, lovely area. We would ride our mountain bikes through there, go all the way up to Tilden Park. And it's a great place the earth that is up there, the twag that you're growing on, is got a lot of rich minerals and tell us about how that lends to the product, the end product, and with the olives that you get.
Yeah, I think the more confusing are the olives. Why are these olives growing in this very temperate climate, as opposed to where we see them up in Corning and that sort of area? That's a little bit more confusing to me as to why that even works. But I've actually got quite a following for the olive oil. Relevant to the Pinot, I think the district where I am is just ideal. I've got a southwest exposure. I've got a lot of maritime influence. These cool, basically not very warm afternoons and cool evenings, periodically with low clouds or fog, is just ideal for very gradual ripening. A lot of the fog that you see drawn in through the Golden Gate, which heads towards the Central Valley periodically, it winds up partially tracking north in the canyon, including today when we had a heck of a mist, which actually leads to other challenges relevant to mildew and whatnot. It's a challenge to grow these grapes. They're what I call capricious. They're a little bit difficult to grow, and yields tend to be low. But I love Pinot Noir, so
I'm glad that you love Pinot Noir, because this is what I always say: a lover of wine is a friend of mine. Not the friend with wine is a friend of mine, but if you love wine, you're a friend of mine. And I love what you do up there. And when you talk about the mailing list, that's how I first met you. 5 years ago, I was walking around with my girlfriend at the Oakland Farmers Market, and I saw this label, and this label is what really kind of blew me away. Take a look at that. I looked at that, and I go, wow, that is an amazing vine label. And then I asked him, San Francisco Bay, where are you from? And when he told me where he was from, I said, I gotta come. I live in this area. I have to come see your place. Got on the mailing list and was invited to one of these events that John had. And there was some music playing, and this was before you did the barn transformation.
Right.
It was small, quaint. Dog was running around. We were playing catch with the dog. And it was a small gathering, but it was a very inviting gathering, and that's what made me feel kind of special to be there in the midst of this farmer in the Richmond Hills. And looking at this, I had him explain a little bit more about this, and I want you to zoom in on this. And then John, I want you to tell us what it is you do for a living, and what it is, how that influenced this label.
Well,
I like the San Francisco Bay.
yeah, so I am a nearly retired vascular surgeon, and perfusion is another word for circulation in the human body. I like the sound of the word, and it was an opportunity, designing the label was an opportunity for me to be full circle relative to 29 years in surgery and then embarking upon growing grapes, growing Pinot Noir. And so what this represents actually that ties everything together is this is the human circulatory system in the shape of a grapevine.
Okay.
What we have is the heart, the aorta, the axillary, brachial, and subclavian arteries to the arms, the carotid arteries up the neck, the thoracic aorta in the chest, splenic, the hepatic artery to the liver, the two renal arteries to the kidneys, and then the aorta splits into the iliac arteries to the pelvis and legs.
Wow.
Very detailed.
That's a pretty awesome story behind the label. Because you
Yeah.
would look at it and only see a vine.
So
that
who-
backstory.
who's
I
the
think I felt like you're missing a root there.
I don't think so. If we have a very
I think it's sexual.
oh goodness,
the roots of your feet?
yeah, no, it carries down into the sort of the pelvis.
Okay, that's right. Okay,
Yeah,
that's a
At
better
any
word
rate,
for it.
And we thought we were clever changing the grape color to the wine
I
color.
kind of saw that. I
Yeah.
like that.
At any rate.
Nice.
So who's your artist with that? Did you commission this?
No, actually, what happened was I've been thinking about it for quite some time, and it all started on the back of an envelope. I basically drew it out in something better than stick figure form, and my wife, she's a textile designer who's really an expert in Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, and just bit by bit she was able to sort of transfer this and create it. And actually it was one of those experiences over 10 years, actually more like 12 years ago, when I realized that she was willing to kind of put up with my detail here, because the aorta is just a certain curvature and the arteries have just a certain nature about them, and she was patient, and it was all, I don't know, it was almost pixel by pixel to make it just right. So
That is awesome, and that's incredible that your wife is that talented. And now here is my challenge to you, the farmer. I noticed, because you trusted your grapes nicely, and they're ready and they're made and laid out, California style. I like to see that grown as your, like, just one grapevine.
to try to train it.
Try to train it to make it look like that, and then trim it. You could be your little bonsai tree.
Could do that.
That would be
Yep.
so awesome. I could see that as I'm walking up the gate.
Give
through
me a
the gate.
chance to retire and find more time to do this.
Just
Yeah.
stress train him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, I for one love this. This is the new 2021. I love the 20 vintage and the 19. The 19 was extraordinary, but this one. When you say, because it's not, how many acres do you have? It's not a really big property.
No. Property is just under 3 acres. It's the equivalent of nearly an acre of Pinot Noir, about 1,000 vines, and then the rest of the property is sort of sprinkled with the olive trees. There's four different Pinot clones, and 5 different Tuscan varieties. But the Pinot was really a matter of contacting a number of Northern California Pinot producers that I really admired, and was able to actually get some responses in terms of which clones and what proportions. And what I did was I found a number of people, everything from an agricultural manager to a crop advisor, who more or less guided me. I have no history as as a farmer, but I know that a lot of successful companies are a matter of surrounding yourself with people that know their job, they know their profession, and I simply follow the instructions.
Follow the formula.
What's that?
Follow the formula and the feeding and growing. And
Yeah, I mean,
seasons
each year, I'm inspired each year because I realize that this is the right thing for me to be doing, because each year I recognize things that I could do better. I could be more efficient. And I begin to recognize more about the nature and the health of the vines. I'm kind of out in the outside edge of the solar system, relevant to most wineries. And so it's unusual for me to be able to have, one of the like nursery representatives or other people rolling through. So it's,
How did you were obviously around with smoking fires?
Mm-hmm.
And then how that stress you out with the growing season, or you were just like,
No, the
going to
worst,
go through it?
the worst we had relevant to the results of that was ash.
Yeah.
No smoke taint. And actually the real worst aspect of that was what my fire insurance costs became.
Oh.
Because I'm in a narrow canyon, which, it's a single fire truck, just can make it along there. So fortunately, as a matter of fact, there's many, my understanding is there's many vineyards that lost the ability, lost insurance companies, lost the ability to, insure.
Right.
And just had to, give it up. So I feel very fortunate that I'm not, even though I feel like I'm in a fire risk zone, I'm not considered to be so by insurers. So.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of look at your property as well defended. You have the vineyard, open area down there,
Right.
And then maybe just a little bit towards the back, but I think that's defensible.
It's considered to be a major fire break
What?
with the vineyard.
Absolutely.
And so at any rate,
Well, I tell you what, this Pinot to me is an outstanding.
Yeah, I love the label.
thank you. Yeah, this was a hobby. I had no expectation that it would turn into something as a commercial business. It's a small commercial business, mostly selling at either small events at my place with the vineyard or at farmers markets at Grand Lake and Clement Street in San Francisco. But come 2016, at the encouragement of family and friends who had tried the Pinot for the preceding several years, I submitted samples of my 2015 and 2014 to the Wine Enthusiast, and I was reasonably sure the following week they'd get back to me and say, stick with your day job. But the Steve Heimoff actually was the guy that checked them out, and he said, you've got something there. The 2015 is young, but I'm going to give it a 91, and the 2014 is pretty remarkable, and I'm going to give it a 94.
This is from Wine Enthusiast?
Yes. And then it was interesting because historically I always thought that these guys who were rattling off adjectives were sitting on couches with a board with a bunch of adjectives, and they'd throw darts at it. He was very specific about what he recognized, and even said reminiscent of the wines east of Route 246 in Santa Barbara County. That's pretty specific. And about 3 or 4 years later, I was down there and I was shocked because these were very, very similar. And then it occurred to me that there's a similar clay soil, there's a southwest exposure, a lot of maritime influence. And so my favorite California Pinots are from Santa Barbara County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really? As opposed to Anderson Valley?
Yeah.
There's a lot more heat.
There's more heat up there.
Yeah.
So I think when you have more heat, you run not the risk of, but you wind up with a bigger, more fruit-forward Pinot. Worst case scenarios, there are some Pinots that are a little difficult for me to differentiate from some Zinfandels. So I think when it's in a cooler environment, you wind up with a more elegant and delicate Pinot Noir that really offers an entry, like a mid-palate and a finish.
So
I like stressing the plants. I feel like you get more out of it. They get more defensive or stronger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's why we try
Get the fruits of their labor.
We try to back off on irrigation as time goes on, so that they're fighting going deeply, for water. The risk with Pinot at this location or in any location is to have an area that's closer to a flat, and because, as they say, grapevines don't like wet feet. And so most of the death of the vines is down low. So it's an important consideration, and actually I reduce irrigation in portions of the vineyard to try to mitigate that.
We used to say the bigger the roots, the bigger the fruits.
That is true.
Oh,
that is true.
for Syrah.
Well, interestingly enough, we have a site there that's an unknown relevant to, would this come up, would the Pinot be muddy or brick colored?
Mm-hmm.
And so initially about 5% was planted as Petite Syrah, which was considered potentially to be a colorant at 1 or 2% in case we had a very pale color, and it wouldn't, at 1 or 2%, it doesn't influence the ability to identify it as a state, as state Pinot. But in fact, a couple of points, the Pinot came up, nice, rich in color, and the Petite Syrah, I didn't have enough heat to ripen it, and so some years later, we grafted Pinot onto all of the Petite Syrah, which grew beautifully, and in a year after grafting just the buds, there was vast growth, which is getting back to your comment about root systems. And so it took off, and it's probably been about the most productive portion of the vineyard, being on the heels of the Petite Syrah.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on now. We are going to taste a little bit of the 2022 Chardonnay.
Give me a sip.
You should get another glass.
That's all right. I'm not really a Chardonnay guy. Oh, wait, hold on.
So anyway,
I'm
tell
not
us a
a
little bit
Chardonnay
about this
person.
wine. It's obviously not an estate
Maybe I
wine.
will be after this.
Well, I will tell you that I consider this a Chardonnay for people who don't like Chardonnay.
For the oaky and the buttery. I'm like,
Right. So this was made with 7% new French oak. It was done in stainless steel and neutral barrels.
it's different. Can you even call this a Chardonnay?
It's a Chardonnay.
Yeah.
It's not a California Chardonnay. It
Okay.
was grown in California, but using a yeast which is not does not prompt a buttery finish is one of the approaches. 2 is stainless steel. 3 is neutral oak, and we used a Harmony yeast, fortunately, the winemaker and I share the same opinion about moving it more towards a French style.
Definitely not your malolactic butter.
Right.
Buttery Chardonnay that you get a lot of California, a lot of, well, at least they say a lot of women that I know love this particular stout. However, I think any lady that tastes this would fall in love.
I think this is sort of halfway between, or it's got some element. It's got some very nice body and mouthfeel, but it has some of that malolactic, but it doesn't have this big thick lamination.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been really happy with this.
It really feels like because I don't use the word structure a lot when it comes to Chardonnay, but this has an excellent structure, an excellent build, excellent makeup. When I talk about structure, I'm looking at your Cabernets, your Cabernet Francs, those wines that have different characteristics, and it seems like it was put together. This wine just seems to be like, the flavor is tremendous, by the way. It's not, like we say, with malolactic fermentation. It's not overbearing with the French oak. Well, French oak actually isn't overbearing to begin with. It's kind of a mellowing oak. So I'm not a big American oak fan when it comes to Chardonnays. I like a little bit of it, but not too much of it. So to have this just kind of roll, down the taste buds, really is.
I think it's really pleasant. I thought you'd like it.
I give this, I'm going to give this my title. I only give this to red wines, but this is a very sexy white wine. That's what I'm calling it.
Thank you.
And I would say normally something like this I'd want cold and crisp. I think he chose the right temperature on this.
I think we let it warm up a little bit.
I don't know. I like it.
A little bit colder would be good, but again, like we talked about earlier, you lose so much flavor if it's super cold.
It's all acid and some citrus and so forth. It becomes you recognize the body. It becomes
finish your glass and taste this one.
More lush. I think satisfying.
Okay, so let's talk retail. What's the bottle of this one retail?
This one's retailing for $34.
Very good. And then the 2021?
Now the 2021, it's typical for us to get anywhere from 50 to 75 cases. So very small yields, right? In 2021, we had a total of 38 cases. And the overhead for production of the wine is pretty much the same, whether or not I'm doing 38 cases or 73 cases. So that's my defensive statement.
It drives the price.
Right. And actually, technically, it ought to be close to twice what the other Pinots are. This is 54. 54, yeah.
Not that bad. Yeah. You've got.
Rollinsky wants to know the wholesale
And
price.
it's not going to last.
We'll talk about that another time. That's a different episode. This is really good Chardonnay.
Yes, no, you need
Step
to.
on in.
You need to.
You're going to fall in love with this one. This is something that needs to be here.
I'm not a Chardonnay.
No, but we have a lot of white wine drinkers here.
Oh no, this is a Chardonnay town. Drinkers.
It reminds me of the rosé that we have that people roll in and they say, I don't drink rosé and so forth. And I always say that a substantial percentage of the people leave with a bottle of the rosé, which is a dry rosé.
You need to get Marlena a sip.
I tried the rosé.
Chardonnay. Try it.
It's very hard to press Chardonnay. It is. This is the hardest grape to be. Interesting smell.
Unless I got a tasting in the afternoon.
There's no reason why we should have gotten them together many more times in the last.
It's a Chardonnay. It has nice texture.
Thing that like set up doctors appointments for different doctors, dentists, every week there was some appointment.
It's very round and soft.
Just get the
I taste oak, you put it in oak.
Neutral oak? I don't know what that means, neutral oak.
Right? You know it's very hard with this
It's not
Chardonnay.
cold and crisp either right now.
And that is another thing. It has to be a little colder. It's alright.
Hey, Judy. You there? You guys doing it? Yeah, we're always doing it.
Less and less French oak. This actually, as opposed to previous vintages that were 30 to 35 new French oak, which is very common for California reds. This has about 22%, which also gets rid of some of those vanilla notes and other aspects that oak brings with it. And I think you have more of a reflection, an honest reflection of the grape. I recently tried Pinots, let's say from the Sebastopol region, that were running anywhere from 7 to 12 or 13% French oak, and I love them. So I mean, that's really a direction we're going in. So that's an important change.
On that blend, when you do that, okay, 'cause I've always been interested in that. You know, my uncle made wine, and I used to help as a kid, 15, 16 years old. But I'm quite sure about how he was blending it. When you say 7% French oak, are you talking you have 7% of all your all the grape, the liquid, the wine in French oak, 7%, the rest in stainless steel, and then you kind of play with the mixture and you're blending it together with the different juices? How does that work?
No. When it comes to let's say the Chardonnay here, we're saying 7% new French oak. In this situation where you have a neutral barrel that is not supposed to be conferring an oak influence, and certainly the stainless steel isn't, we'll use staves, French oak staves, and staves are, depending on their size, can be reflective of an eighth of a barrel equivalent or a quarter of a barrel equivalent, and so based on the total volume of wine that you have, usually what happens is, let's say it's in neutral barrels. When you put in your staves, what happens is we'll put in one, sometimes two staves, right? In a barrel, like a fishing stringer, and then that becomes like fully integrated into the wine, and then really once it's staged for bottling, it's all combined into a stainless steel container. And so one is more excessively oaked, and that's actually what makes it very interesting. Is that you can, when you're tasting in advance, it's really delightful to be able to go and actually understand what the oak is doing, because you're trying it from the oak barrel, and then you're trying it from the neutral barrel, and you just it helps with your understanding and your vocabulary to recognize and your palate. So at any rate, that's the way it's done. We kind of make a decision in advance as to what sort of percentage of oak we want, and it's not as though we hold something out.
So there's mathematics involved to figure out how much the yield is compared to how many staves that you use.
Right. So if you know the volume of what it is, and then you can determine whether or not you have one or two staves and all that sort of based opposite the volume, and that's how it's calculated.
Awesome. We're learning a little about winemaking here, you guys.
Yeah.
What's great about this? Cheers, first of all.
Class 101.
Chardonnay here.
No, I like this.
It's
This is
really
cool.
good.
And I'm not a Chardonnay.
How many times are you going to say that?
As many times until you keep serving me another one.
Until Marlena orders.
Right.
So and obviously this is coming from a different vineyards. So I mean, how high are their yields, and how much percentage do you get? Did you do a block purchase?
I have no idea what their total quantity is.
You know what you got.
Yeah, I know what I got. We got 1.06 tons. So I shared that with another winemaker. So we got basically 2 tons. This is from Santa Lucia Highlands, located about 800 feet altitude, and it is cool nights, maritime influence.
So for those people watching on TikTok that are maybe not from this country, Santa Lucia Highlands, what part of California are we talking?
It's part of Monterey County.
Okay.
Ooh, I like Monterey.
Yeah. So, at any rate, but it's relevant to perfusion. The flagship is Pinot Noir. There's guest vintages that I have access to periodically. We have an unusual one for us. We have a Syrah coming from Amador, which we've never had before. I've got a Dry Creek Zin from Old Vine that's also new. The Chardonnay is brand new. And then in the Sauv Blanc that we had before, it's going to disappear. That particular vineyard, which was Gian Quinto up in the Russian River, all of it was purchased by a big producer, and so now we're looking for another Sauv Blanc. So I'd like to alternate between the Chardonnay and the Sauv Blanc.
Yeah, keep exploring.
Periodic, yeah. There's also an interest in Albarino as well. Yeah. But at any rate, and actually moving forward, we're thinking we may have access to a Petit Verdot, which would be a brand new direction for us.
Just standalone, fantastic. You utilize this blending grape a lot, in your big red wine, style beers, but straight up Petit Verdot, Pine Ridge did to have it by itself, it just introduces you to a brand new taste, brand new grape, brand new wine. It's not like your Cabs, it's not like Pinot. And then to be able to figure that out and differentiate what grape is what, and all these grapes a lot of times are in one bottle of wine that you drink and you love.
And there are reds that you're drinking that have 1% and 2%
Just the
of something else, and I will tell you, you sit down and you have a series, you will recognize a pretty dramatic difference, even 1 or 2% from of a different wine. It's pretty remarkable. But it's important, as you say, to have a foundation where you know what this particular grape has to offer. And I'm actually, like I said before, I'm more of a farmer than a palate. And sitting down with a winemaker is just a great opportunity and really a privilege to sort of see a different passion and profession.
Well, maybe that would be Grape Nest 23.2, and invite Thomas Leaf to come in with you one day, maybe in the future.
Any chance of you doing some bubbles, some sparkling?
The only bubbles that we've done have been.
Yes.
The only bubbles that we have done have been
accidental secondary fermentation.
Yeah, and a winemaking error. We did a
that sounds exclusive.
we did a rosé of Barbera in 2018, and it was filtered. I think it was a 3-micron filter. Might have been a little bit bigger, but at any rate, some of the yeast snuck into the bottles, and we wound up having this nice frisé at the end, which it was super popular and it disappeared. And I couldn't talk the winemaker Tom into the same approach in the future because as a perfectionist, it's just that was a mistake. But I mean the real mistake would have been if there was enough residual sugar that we would have been blowing corks.
Oh,
as I used to do with beer.
Oh, wait. So you started on beer?
Yeah, years ago.
Beers ago. Many beers ago.
Many cheers.
Many cheers ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I am briefly curious because you were a surgeon. And so what was that crossover like getting into wine? Did you have an interest in wine?
Well, I'll try to make it brief.
World traveler?
No, nothing so impressive. Like I said, I have no background in agriculture other than just vegetable gardening. I was in a wine group back in the 80s when I was living here before I went off for medical training, and it was a huge amount of work to go find, get the grapes, bring them back, do all the work. We were working with 5-gallon glass carboys and oak chips and whatnot. Some of it was second pick. Yeah, but it was so much work, and almost like when you had, maybe if you've made beer, right? And you felt like you had to make an excuse before they tried it, homebrew. That's how I felt about the wine. And so more or less, I left that experience with lousy grapes make lousy wine. There's really, you can't pull that rabbit out of that hat. You can't pull that. You can't. Yeah, you just can't. And so, yeah, it was there were more expletives, but I left those out. And so, after securing this property, which was basically a horse ranch with loads of different animals, I saw an opportunity. I thought southwest exposure, a lot of space, good drainage, and so forth, and did enough research on the soil, the water, had the contact with the Northern California Pinot producers, and was really excited that I was able to hire a vineyard manager for Duckland. And he and his crew came down between February and June of 2007 and planted it. It was an orchestration. It was beautiful. At any rate, and from there on, I followed instructions. I have contact with a nursery rep who's been through every year 2 or 3 times. I'm drawing leaf and petiole samples, getting nutrition back, and then that affects the whole nutritional program for the rest of the year. There's some excesses, some deficiencies, and that guides what I do. And then ultimately, there's a battle between the winemaker and the farmer in terms of getting the fruit off the vine. The farmer is wiped out, and it's like, let's go, let's get it out of here, because there's birds, there's bees, there's all kinds of four-leggeds that are out there, and the winemaker is like, what color are the seeds? And what are you tasting in the flavor of the juice? And least of all, in my opinion, nearly least of all, is what's the bricks? Because there's plenty, there are, certainly I know that I'm going to have ripening usually at 24.5 to 25.5, but there's something about the complexity of the juice that is no longer just a cloying sweetness, and there becomes a complexity to just the crushed grape juice. And then, as important as anything else, actually I think even more important is seeing the seed color changes into a sepia brown from a neon green. And it can be very difficult to be patient waiting as you're seeing some of your grape clusters disappearing and whatnot. So it's a battle, and so I'm glad I have a winemaker, because by the time those grapes are off, I'm done. There's so much to attend to do a good job, and that's one reason why I prefer to just pass it off and have a few months to, attend to overwintering and all the responsibilities in the vineyard there, which are at a slower pace.
Going back to the bricks, How do you measure the bricks?
What exactly are?
PRIX.
I know the restaurant in Rutherford. Is it Rutherford?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And they got one in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the sugar level percentage in the grapes. So it's measured using a refractometer. So what happens? It's actually another area in which I've learned quite a bit. So what you're doing is when your grapes have changed color, which is called veraison. At some certain point beyond that, you choose to go out and sample grapes, crush them, mix them up together, and then put drops onto a refractometer, which is basically a prism that is calibrated for sugar. And if you look through this to the light, it actually has calibration from maybe 15 up to maybe even as high as 40. And you wind up with actually a clear change. It's like a half moon. Actually, it's more straight across, but it's very clear where your bricks are. Okay. Typically, bricks will go up by a point and a half a week, and you have to be extraordinarily careful with a lot of heat. We actually had in 2017 temperatures 104, 106, which is extraordinary for this area, and the bricks went up 4 points in 1 week, and we were pulling, some of them were raisins, and some of it was coming in at a bricks of like 28, and once you wind up with the bricks at 28, if you just ferment that out, you're going to wind up with an alcohol of 15.5 to 16.5, which is just going to be super hot. And you also run the risk of a stalled fermentation because the yeast that you're using may be inhibited once the alcohol reaches a certain level. So it's customary to add water. And there's a calculation made. It's 0.59 toward times your bricks level to estimate what your ultimate alcohol will be. And so that's important in terms of determining whether or not you're going to have, what the nature of that wine's going to be. You could have a conventional, at least these days, alcohol of high 13s, low 14s, or mid 13s, or you can go for a hipster wine, which is afternoon drinking and whatnot. But that's in the mid to upper 12s. But so it's important.
It's got legs.
Yeah, it's
legs. Hipster wine, no legs.
Yeah. So at any rate, all these things are influential.
Thus the argument between farmer and winemaker. That percentage you just talked about, being able to go up 4% within a week,
4 points in a week.
Times that's
and that's one of those situations where it's brutal.
Yeah.
Where can you get a crew? Can you get a crew? We don't have the opportunity. We don't have the opportunity to put the lights up and harvest overnight.
That's when you get to email list now, John.
Right.
You get those people coming. I'll be
That's
up
right.
there tonight. I'll be up there tonight.
That's right. A couple bottles of wine.
Exactly. Everybody be part of the harvest. Let's go.
So, at any rate, we're now
ready to fit him. I've got probably 40 of those pruners. Yeah, from back. I'll drop them off with you if you want.
Now we're at a point now where we've taken leaves off on the sunny side. What you do is your morning light. You're taking leaves off in order to have good airflow and space and light to help with maturing and rather ripening. Afternoon, where you can have a lot more heat. We leave the leaves on, and at this point, as we're getting to veraison, we're now thinking about putting the nets up.
Yeah.
Which are essential.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Birds and the critters. You can have, raccoon and a variety of other ones. Years ago, I was just a little bit more aggressive, where I put nets up, and one morning I actually went out at about 3 o'clock in the morning when I realized I was losing grapes and wondering what was going on. And when I went down with a headlamp, and there were multiple pairs of green eyes all around. And at that point, I decided I was going to put up an electric fence at 8 inches off the ground. I mean, it can drive you crazy. It's like full Caddyshack.
Yeah, I was going to say
Any idea what those creatures were?
You know, I did some have-a-heart trapping and releasing, mostly possum, except that I spoke with somebody from the county. They said possum are not going to be eating bridge so much as other things. Raccoons possibly, but I almost never see them. Deer are not getting in, I guarantee it.
I don't think I could survive with
Squirrels I saw for the first time last year, and I what's that?
they're not big fruit eaters, are
Well, anyway, it's
Their eating habits change.
right, whatever's
Possums,
Yeah.
possums.
exactly.
We're eating possum today.
So at any rate, it's kind of war out there, and so usually if I have somebody that comes in and says, "Oh, you're living my dream," I usually discourage them.
Yeah,
And
you
just
just
say,
don't
just sit. Yeah, exactly. One of my early, a girlfriend I had years and years ago that came through the Davis Enology program. I let her know that I ready to commit to planting a vineyard, and she did this like lazy Z, and she said, "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into," and she was right. I think I would have done it again, but I'm not positive.
Wow. And on that note,
That's a story.
Yeah.
That is
a great
Thank you for.
The story hasn't ended either.
John, you have any parting words for our audience out there about winemaking and anybody who has aspirations for winemaking? Because you could either encourage or totally destroy the dreams of somebody.
No, you just gotta follow your heart. Yeah.
Your vascular system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Follow your heart.
It's
Follow your heart. I don't know why I wound up doing this exactly, but I just sort of followed my passion. And if you've got passion and patience and willing to surround yourself with people that are more informed and are patient with you, dreams will come true.
Yeah.
It worked for me. Yeah. I feel very fortunate,
Well,
very
you have
privileged.
amazing wine, so we're happy that you follow.
And
It's
we
my
want to
pleasure.
thank you for sharing it, and thank you for being a Richmond-based business.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So
Let's hope
We're pretty much drinking duck horns. They were.
they were the ones who
I know,
that's the great thing about it is listening to everything from the beginning to the end. The team that you brought together. I mean,
Right.
yeah, you got Dan Duckhorn's guys coming in to check out your soil for you, because I remember you telling me horror stories about the soil at first, the clay, digging in, and how bad it was.
I just couldn't believe anything grew there.
Yeah. Yet you are producing a way above average product, where it is so hard to grow this product. People do not know how difficult it is to grow Pinot Noir grapes. I tried in my backyard. It was cold. It was very hot in that region, but I had Syrah growing too. And Syrah went like Superman, and my little Pinots were about like this. And they stayed like that for 4 or 5 years. I mean, they wouldn't get any bigger, but the Syrah took over everything. It started, I didn't put them down so well, but it was like, and then 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
They were like this.
Yeah.
The stocks were like this, and the Pinot, we did like, I'm never going to be able to grow Pinot, that's for sure. Because I was thinking, man, maybe if I could just get a few grapes off this thing. Well, ain't going to happen.
Oh, no. Yeah. I got my bubbles over there.
Oh, got it.
John, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
And we look forward to perhaps having you again. Maybe one time you could bring Thomas down.
I'll talk to him.
Absolutely.
He's a busy man.
All right. Yeah, I'm sure he is. Now, he's affiliated with, what was the winery?
Well, he's over at Mansfield Dunn. He's actually like kind of an independent contractor.
Okay.
So he's not, part of the labels.
Hired.
But he's actually hired by the labels, that he produces. And so he's managing, I believe, like 8 different labels now. So he's this past the bottling that's happening shortly. There's 14 different lots in one day that are going. About 1,000 cases.
Wow.
He's got like 8 different labels, and he's the wizard behind the curtain.
Well,
he really is.
We'd have to catch him at one of his days off if he was even up for something like that. Well, again, kudos to you for having that be part of this team that you put together to produce such a fabulous wine.
Thank you.
For sharing with us. We thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Cheers to John
Yeah.
and his efforts and being right here in the city of Richmond. Thank
Here we
you,
are.
my friend.
San Francisco guys. All right, thanks, dude.
Thanks, guys.
That was really